identified who the daddy is, we pick out about the 100 biggest or best lambs, ram lambs. All those are then individually tissue sampled again. We send that across to a laboratory in New Zealand, and we get a full genome structure breakdown. So we find out what genes they've got switched on within the animal. So we can now look at things like parasite resistance, meat yield, wool traits, lots of different things. There's about 24 traits in total. And we can really start, the really exciting thing then is you can start tailoring the sheep more to your environment. So what we're trying to do now, if you like, is now we're a real integrated mixed farm, rather than just breeding traditional sheep, if you like, that sheep farmers want. We can tailor them a lot more to what arable farmers desire. And again, you know, I was guilty of it myself. Sheep is sheep is sheep. But actually, when you start thinking about what the sheep are, you know, if you're an arable farmer and you've got sheep, you're going to want them there for a reason. You don't want them to look pretty. They're there to support the arable. They're there to support the arable in terms of soil fertility, black grass control, and perhaps a slight bit of profitability by taking more of your income, diversifying it into environmental schemes. The interesting thing, actually, when you start thinking about it, is what do sheep farmers want and what do arable farmers want from their flocks? Well, sheep farmers, one of the key profitabilities is time on farm. If you can get your lambs growing and away into Tesco's, money in the bank, that's all they really care about. Arable farmers are a bit of a different breed. You're not necessarily having the sheep purely for their meat, if you like. You're having them to serve a purpose. You're having them for cover crop destruction, for soil fertility and that sort of thing. So an arable farmer would actually want a much more slow growing animal, because you want them there all over winter. Again, when you start looking at the physiology of a sheep, traditionally sheep farmers would probably want larger fat reserves, so that in lean times over winter, when we're up on the hill or on you know, having to feed silage or concentrates out, that animal's got a large reserve of fat, if you like, that it can call on just to maintain its body condition score. Well, in an arable system, I mean, we've got more food than we can feed sheep, and our biggest problem is actually obese sheep, much like a Jeremy Kyle episode. So yeah, we actually go completely the opposite. We now look for slightly negative fat EBVs. So our sheep actually almost have trouble with it. They certainly don't layer on the fat anything like as much as a traditional farmer would want. And the advantage of that, again, is because we're keeping these lambs longer, we're going to grow them to higher carcass weights. Typical sheep farmers would probably start selling about 18 kilos dead weight. If we're going to keep these sheep eating our cover crops, doing all this good stuff for the soil, we're going to keep them probably until they hit 20, 21 kilos. By taking them up to that high weight, we're going to have to make sure that they're not a big fatty mess and that no market wants them. So again, we can, you know, by looking at the genome structure, by carefully selecting our rams, we can really start to change the sheep, for want of a better word, and get them suited much more robustly into an arable system, and make the whole thing just mesh a lot nicer, with a few less compromises. Finally, leveraging environmental schemes, and this is where we've been really successful, again in terms of blackgrass and such. If you look at that, one of our yield maps from a combine, what we can do is the red bits for the low yielding stuff, obviously. So on this big field like this, we can just run a fence along there, put that into a nice herbal lay, something that pays quite well. We can do the same thing to this. We've got all the costs involved. We produced a little leaflet for everyone. We've got the entire gross margin for 1,000 head of flock, and coupled with all of the environmental schemes and options you'd want to take care of. But in that example, we put it all into a GS4 mix, which is a legume and herb-rich sward. And for the pleasure of taking out that crap yielding soil, the government paid us £309 a hectare. We put on a Neil fertiliser supplement and got another £131 per hectare. And they paid us £4.90 to put all the fencing up as well, per metre. And after 5 years, hopefully, because that's the length of the term, the sheep will have done their business, will have had a lot better soil fertility. And if I want, I'll just rip up all the fencing and put it back into wheat. And that's the sort of schemes where we can really start making a big impact. I mean, ultimately, we are all just rented ground. We don't really own anything. So everything we do has to make money. We're in a big arable area, there's big operators. You know, when we go up for rents, we're paying fairly significant sums of money. So everything we do really has to pay. So by leveraging the sheep, leveraging the environmental schemes, we can really hope together to sort of come up with a system that's greater than the sum of its parts. That's it. Any questions?
You don't think about easy care or examia views or anything then? Or it's not white?
It's not white, no. That's a very good question. We chose New Zealand Romneys just purely because of their massive genetic pool. If you want some facts and figures, there's more Romneys in New Zealand than there are sheep in the UK. In terms of performance recording, in terms of the genomic work we've done, or the New Zealand government have done that we can capitalise on, the New Zealand government invested over $80 million in genotyping the New Zealand Romney, which is how we're able to take all these gene samples, send them to a laboratory and get full genome work back. I mean, we're doing stuff now that the ex-Lanas won't be able to do for another 10, 15 years at least, and assuming they can get a reference population big enough to do it. So, New Zealand's got the largest recorded flock in the world. Mostly, again, 70% of it is Romneys. So by really utilising that New Zealand Romney, we can compare ourselves not just across farmers in the UK, we can compare ourselves across farmers in the world. New Zealand Romney's now reached as far across as Paraguay, Argentina, Australia, New Zealand, UK, Germany. It really is a massive genetic pool. And again, I know what you're saying about the ex-Lanas and such being wool shedders, and I completely agree. It's a massive stress off. The nice thing about Romney wool is it's got a fairly low micron rating. It's slightly above where it has to be for clothing, but it's still around the sort of 30-35 micron. We still get paid. I think Texcloth this year are paying us about 95 pence a kilo. We average 5 kilos per ewe, so that's about £3.80. It costs us £1.35 to shear them. So we're still making money at that. And actually at 95 pence, it's about the lowest it's ever been. That's really absolutely scraping the barrel of wool price. And every time I turn on the TV, I keep hearing more and more about the use of plastics, about microfibers in the sea, about fish getting killed. And I just keep thinking, perhaps really rather naively, that wool's probably due a revival.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Thank you. Thank you. Brilliant talk. I want to ask you two questions. One, really opened up by your last slide, the yield on the field, and your interesting analysis of the ag environment response you made. Would that have been worth doing had you not had? And so, first question is the point of those grants to introduce serious farmers to what might be possible even if they didn't get the grant? And the other question I have is, do you think that kind of rotation approach with sheep coming in, say 5 years or whatever, is something which is that part of a longer term change in output that arable farmers should have? I mean, more broadly than just people who are on the market with great percentage stock.
Yeah. I mean, to answer your first question then, it very much depends what kind of farmer you are. If you're an owner-occupier and the farm's been in the family for generations and it's all paid off for, the environmental schemes are a nice to have, but certainly it allows you the flexibility to do a lot more longer-term thinking, if you like, and you can take that field out for 5 years because, it's all paid for and bought. Unfortunately, we're not quite in that position just yet. We have HSBC on our back, we have landlords on our back, and everyone keeps phoning me up asking for money. So we've got to be a bit more, a little bit more mercenary about the whole situation, to be honest. And would we do it if, Joey, how much of a farm can I take out if I don't pay any environmental schemes? Right. So yeah, I mean we've got big rents to pay, we've got HP on machinery, everything has to pay. I know it doesn't sound terribly fashionable, but that's just the reality of the situation of being tenant farmers. Second point on whether or not I think it's a longer term trend. I mean, to be honest, if we'd have been at the show Groundswell hasn't been going 5 years, I don't think, well, certainly not in its current big scheme. So that tells you again, a look around at the current trend. Certainly, if we had cereals 5 years ago, I doubt anyone would have come to the stand, and certainly we'd have just laughed, made a patronising joke about livestock farmers and sort of left. Now I think, as going forward, I think there's an awful lot more interest going forward in terms of sustainability, glyphosate use. You know, the public are getting a lot more keen on where their food are coming from, and I think we're going to have to. It's not learning new skills; it's just learning what Grandad did. You know, all we're trying to do is go back round the circle again. You know, none of this is. You know, we can all dress it up in new fancy techno-grazing terms, but again, mob grazing, techno-grazing. Grandad used to say, you know, just don't leave the sheep in the field so that they hear the sort of church bells. You know, the church bells ring for once. It's nothing new. So again, do I think it's part? You know, I think it's probably these things are cyclic, and I believe at the minute we're probably coming up to an upcycle. Go for it.
Rob, specifically in a tillage situation where you have store lambs over winter on a cover crop that's going to be followed by a cash crop in the spring.
Yeah.
Do you have a grazing management system? Do you move them around a few times, or do you just leave them in blocks? Or do you have a size or a number? You say like a brassica cover crop or a good diverse mix of whatever.
Yeah. So on a typical brassica, no, we wouldn't set stock like that. What we probably tend to do, I'm fairly lazy, so I will put a very big break. And I'm not into moving electric fences every day. I like to see my wife and kids occasionally. This winter we had sort of 3,500 animals behind electric on cover crops here and around. I think that was our peak. That was a bit fun. So we just put in big breaks, 10 days. Again, because the nice thing now is because a lot of it is our own land. I know I don't have to eat every last bulb, every last leaf, because it's me. And if it stays in the soil and the worms eat it, well, it's going to do my wheat crop the next year some good anyway. So I think with all this sort of stuff, there's got to be a bit of compromise, and I think largely there's got to be some sort of dialogue, if you like, between it. You know, if you're just going to have a grazier come in, for example, the more money you charge him, the more he's going to have to utilise that crop, and the worse job he's going to do, if you like. You know, if you're picking figures out, yeah, if you're going to charge him 15 quid an acre for a crop of stubble turnips, but say, look, you know, can you move the sheep on? I don't want to cause any compaction. I don't want any hassle. He'll put big brakes on, he'll move them fairly regularly because he'll want to keep him with you. If you say you're going to charge him 65 quid, he's going to make his margin, if you like, he's going to make sure every last bulb, every last leaf is eaten, and if he trashes the field to do it, so be it. You know,